welcome everyone. I'm MJ Dakota, the founder and executive director of Rethink Breast Cancer, and really excited about this panel. We've been holding them once a month for a while now on different topics, and it's just been amazing to meet great panelists and experts, and also bring the community together and have this kind of platform that's just been so helpful. One of the brighter spots during this year, right? So I wanted to just start by introducing our panel. So I'm really excited, quite interesting and very diverse group of women we have here tonight. So first, let me introduce you to Dr. Kristen Rojas. She is a fellowship-trained breast surgeon and board-certified gynecological surgeon with a passion for comprehensive wellness in women's cancer care. So she's originally from Texas and graduated from UT Southwestern Medical School and completed her residency training at Brown University Women and Infants Hospital, followed by a breast surgery fellowship in Brooklyn. She is the founder and director of a program, the acronym is MUSIC, which I thought was great. She's the director of Menopause, Urogenital, Sexual Health, and Intimacy program that addresses the sexual side effects of cancer treatment. Her research interests include opioid minimizing techniques in breast surgery and developing and studying new interventions for women experiencing the sexual side effects of cancer treatment. So welcome, Dr. Rojas. Next up, do you want to just wave so that maybe you did already? Yeah. Next up, we have Kira Kotler, who is the founder and CEO, of Everviolet, an intimate apparel and loungewear collection designed to bridge the worlds of healthcare and fashion by addressing the functional and psychological needs of post-operative breast cancer patients. Everviolet is actually really excited, part of our Rethinking Pink lineup, supporting our organization's work this month. Everviolet was born out of her personal experience with breast cancer at the age of 40. Formerly a brand director at Adidas Group in San Francisco, Kira led strategy and design for retail clients in both bricks and mortar and e-commerce applications. She's also a professional artist whose work is exhibited and collected internationally. Do a lot. Then we have, thank you. Then we have Jalila Jones, a self-proclaimed breast cancer warrior, professional dancer, and fitness instructor from New York City. She began her dance training at a very young age, studying several techniques at the Alvin Ailey American Dance School, completing the independent study program in 2007. She's performed with several artists such as Crystal Smith, Neo, Jennifer Hudson, and Patti LaBelle, and is a member of the Alfred Gallman Dance Company and Forces of Nature Dance Company. After experiencing a paralyzing injury, Jalila turned her passion for movement towards fitness, teaching, and choreographing. Now Jalila started her own online international training program. I just found out she's been just back from Dubai, while also training to be an instructor for PVolve, where she will assist in launching their London facility. She truly believes in creating and instructing workouts that are not only enjoyable, but also effective. So thank you. Thanks for being here. And last but not least, Christina Zajic. Christina is a 32-year-old storyteller, world traveler, and shameless fan of wine, cheese, and the backless dress. She's traveled to 35 countries, most of which have been solo adventures, led a sustainability project to provide access to water pumps and sanitation programs to 500,000 people in Eastern India, and most recently as a sales director at a national solar company. She developed several of the large community solar projects in the country, providing solar power to cities, universities, schools, districts, and corporations. She also runs a travel website, jetsetbrunettediaries.com, and is writing a memoir detailing every messy and wild step in her life, including the time she ended up in the back of a police van in New Delhi, what to do when a guy removes his teeth on the first date, and the ingenious trick to securing your first fake ID before the age of 21. Don't tell anyone I was 16 when I got my first one. She was diagnosed with at 28 with stage 2B invasive ductal carcinoma and experienced recurrence at age 30 with metastatic breast cancer. Hi, Christina, and welcome to our amazing panelists. So I thought, thank you. I thought to kick things off, I would love to hear just a little bit from each of you what drew you to the panel in the first place, and also why you think it's an important topic for our community, for the Rethink Breast Cancer community, and for young women with breast cancer. And why don't we go in reverse order from the introductions? So that means Christina, the jet-setting brunette, is up first.
Not too much jet setting with COVID right now, but that's okay. Tonight's an adventure. It will be. So my name is Christina. I have been through the breast cancer journey, I guess, one time, but now I'm currently going through it. So I think because I've experienced so many different stages of the disease in terms of treatment and the surgeries, and then having time on the hormone suppressors and the existential crisis of having cancer, I've thought so much about how it affects me as a person, like how have I had to rebuild, but also how will it affect the way people see me and how will I interact with others? So today's panel, I think, will also be so informative for me as a prior and current breast cancer patient, because I think we all have so many of these questions and it's uncomfortable sometimes to talk about it. So this is going to be a great venue to get everyone more comfortable and know that we're not alone in going through this.
Thank you so much. All right, I think Kira, you're up next. I think you're muted.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Okay. So yeah, as you mentioned, I faced breast cancer at the age of 40, and thankfully I was very lucky. I was diagnosed early, but in recovering from my double mastectomy and reconstructive surgeries, I found getting dressed in the morning to be one of the biggest issues. And, it was a pain issue. It was lack of attractive garments. There was just, I kept saying it was like insult on top of injury. And it led me to delve really deep into this whole notion of body image, because I started to struggle. And the more women I spoke with, the more I realized how universal this was, and not just for newly diagnosed women, but for women who were 10, 20, 30-year thrivers, still manually pulling wires out of bras or cutting into fabric just to feel comfortable. And really it became, for me, this realization that it's a barrier to healing. It's a barrier to feeling like oneself. And so I started to focus so much on this notion of how we can, even in the midst of a fight, really try and do things for ourselves that can make us feel better about ourselves. And so for me, part of how I'm doing that is by creating this line of clothing, but also it's about coming together in community and supporting one another and these very intimate issues. So I experience it personally. I'm also on hormonal suppressants and such, but I'm also speaking with women every single day about some of their challenges. And I feel it's a subject that really needs to be spoken to. So I'm very grateful to be here today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We're grateful to have you. Jalila, our dancer.
Hi. Okay. I found this important mainly because for me, I was saying to the ladies that my experience in the Middle East, it's quite conservative and there's not a space to have this conversation. And all of my doctors were male. And also when I got my diagnosis this last December, my mom flew out to be with me in Dubai to go through the process. So I didn't really have a place where I found a group of ladies that I could really talk to about these issues. My mom was with me every day, or, I'm talking to male doctors, and, having that experience was extremely unfamiliar. So since being back in the States, the end of July, because of COVID, the first time I'm actually going to go to a breast center will be next week. So I said, this is a really great community and a great outlet to have these conversations. This is the first time I'm going to be exploring this topic with you guys. So I'm super excited about this. And I was saying that I think that this is going to be quite healing for me. And it's just already special talking to a bunch of people and a bunch of ladies and a group of women that have gone through a similar experience to me, as me.
Amazing. That seems to be what our panels, all of our programming, it's about sharing and learning, and we're all learning from each other, and it helps everybody. So thank you. And Kristen, I know you work with a lot of patients and probably would concur.
Definitely. I was raised in a pretty conservative household in small town Texas, and knew I wanted to focus on women's health, and then was drawn to surgery, and now I take care of women with breast cancer. I also do some of the GYN procedures related to women who have a BRCA mutation or who need a hysterectomy for other cancer-related issues. And in my last year of training and fellowship, I had a couple of patients who started talking to me about their issues with their endocrine therapy or their anti-estrogen. They were younger women who were on ovarian suppression and anastrozole. And, you know, one of them told me, you know, no one, she had finished chemo, gone through surgery, and she said, you know, no one, I went through everything and I decided to have sex with my husband, and it felt like knives, and no one told me it was going to feel that way. And I thought something was really wrong with me. I thought I was dying. And I was so upset by that. I felt like, wow, we've really, there's work for us to do. And we dropped the ball in, number one, doing a good job of preparing women for these issues. And number two, having ways to address them that balance, you know, the fears that everyone has, you know, as your oncologist, as your surgeon. I don't want to give you a treatment that could potentially increase your risk of recurrence. And so it's really a balancing act, trying to figure that out. So I've dedicated a part of my career to figuring a lot of those things out. And a lot of that has to do with talking to my patients in the music program. And I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. So I think, as Shauna mentioned, we fielded a few questions over the last couple of weeks as we were promoting this panel, and I kind of took a look at what came in, and they kind of break into different themes. So we've got a few that are specific around body image, communication, few questions that were communication with partners. So whether single and dating, and how do you break the news, or been with your partner for a long time and it's different. So how to communicate about that. And I think to your point, Kristen, communication with physicians, there were a couple of questions around that. And then we had a few more specific, I'd say technical questions. But why don't we start with body image? And there was definitely a few different questions that came in describing that feeling of feeling really disconnected from your own body, you know, looking at the mirror and just feeling like uncomfortable, not wanting to touch your body, not wanting to do even a breast exam, and just really feeling that kind of disconnect is the word that sort of kept coming up in a few of the different questions, and just how stressful that is, that your own body stresses you out. So we were sort of discussing, how do we want to do this in Zoom where we don't have that energy and body image of sort of knowing who wants to take the first question. But anyone want to try it out? Christina Zajic, do you want to try?
Yeah, sure. I'll give it a go. It's a big one. So something I started doing in my life in general 4 or so years ago is, anytime I was feeling kind of down and not really pleased with where I was at, I created something called the Joy List. And when I was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer at the age of 30, I decided to create a sexy list, I suppose, or a saucy or sassy list. And really, it was a fun exercise, and it made me feel good to do it in the moment too. But really compiling a list of any and everything that makes you feel good about yourself. And it can be as outlandish or as simple as you want it to be, like buying some satin pajamas, or literally listing out a song you like that gets you in a good mood. But that way you have sort of an easy to reference guide that you can tap into anytime you're sort of feeling like this disconnect from yourself. And it's a good way to focus on the things that are positive about what you got going on. So that's something I do, but I'm a little bit of a cheese ball, but that's worked out for me.
I like how it's a bit of a different twist on the gratitude list. It's sort of gratitude, but almost like bringing it back to your body. Yeah. Thank you. Kira, I'm wondering, with the creation of Everviolet, I would imagine, and that came out of your own experience, of, getting, you described the challenge of just getting dressed in the morning. And that was sort of what a few women were describing, of just looking at the mirror, or, not wanting to touch, feeling that your clothes don't fit the same. So there's the emotional impact of feeling disconnected from your body post-surgery, but also, the reality is, it's not just that you're feeling different, it is different. Clothes fit differently, things are different. Any thoughts, or want to share any tips?
Yeah, it's so hard because it is all interconnected. And, I can remember in my own experience just being afraid to even look at myself, much less touch or check or anything like that. And then all the pain that I experienced just in trying to wear what I thought were very basic, simple garments. I too am a dancer and come from this fitness place. And so for me, being able to put on some sort of a sports bra or yoga top and be able to get out onto the trails or do a workout was really important. And I didn't feel like I could do that without both pain and a lack of discretion. I'm private. I didn't necessarily want to wear what I had been through. So I think that what I focus on is sort of the interconnectivity of all of these things. And so how when we suffer physically or emotionally or psychologically, it dampens our sense of self. It makes us not enjoy life as much. It really distresses our quality of life. And, it's not always easy to just, snap fingers or put on a garment and feel great. It's a process. So I think, for me personally, I chose to sort of, instead of being critical or remorseful or sad for what I had lost, I tried to focus on what I had gained. And not in a way that was to minimize the experience, but in a way to sort of find silver linings and see my scars as badges of courage and realize that they made me uniquely me. And so I think that by accepting the physical, I was able to generate a lot of more compassion for myself emotionally and psychologically. And then so too, that leads into sort of this idea of adorning oneself or wearing comfortable garments or sustainable garments that are good for the body and healthy for the body, and sort of empowering oneself to try and make good, healthy choices for the rest of our lives. So, but it's so interlayered, and I do, it's hard to separate one thing from the other because they're just so connected.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very interconnected, and it's also maybe not linear, or it's not, the stages are different for everyone in terms of acceptance, and it's not the same for everyone. So Dr. Rojas, I'm wondering, because you've been seeing so many women for a number of years in your practice, one of the questions that came up, which it's hard to answer, but it's more like, how long does this take? How long does it take to get feeling like my old self again, or closer to my old self again? Someone asked, I'm a year out of treatment and I still don't feel like my old self. A year is still pretty new, as many of us know. My hair is short, I don't have any feeling in my breasts, and I'm not as strong as I used to be. Will I ever get my old self back?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. With regards to feeling like yourself again, from the GYN or sexual health perspective, one of the big misconceptions that I think oncologists have had, and I've been told when I do talks to other oncologists, is that, oh, these symptoms will eventually get better. Like we always tell women, oh, your hot flashes will get better, but these other types of symptoms, they don't get better. And if they can actually get worse with time. And I feel like we didn't do a great job addressing that. And so there are a couple of things that I like to talk about to address those. But as far as feeling like yourself, I think that everyone is different. And, I've seen women who sometimes seem to bounce back and not be affected at all. And then later on, it comes up again. And I think everyone processes things in their own ways. And my biggest piece of advice, I think, would be to ask for support. So, with 2020, like, we're all strong women. You maybe don't want to ask for help, but really loop in the people that care about you, and ask your oncologist and your primary doctor and your gynecologist, hey, this is happening, and And, do you have any referrals, or could I talk to someone, or participate in more events like this and hear the perspectives of all of you guys?
Thank you. That's great. Another question that came up that's kind of related, and then I'll kind of move on to the next topic. But someone said, I'm feeling a bit guilty because I'm worrying about weight gain and my looks and all of this when, I've just been through cancer. So you've got, okay, cancer, life-threatening illness. Should that be my focus? Why am I worried about how I look and feel? I thought maybe Jalila, do you want to speak to that? Is that anything you've experienced or?
Well, I can totally relate 100%. I was going to actually say when I was diagnosed, I didn't have trouble dealing with the diagnosis because from a doctor's perspective, they were like, okay, we caught it at stage 2, it's early, da, da, da. I started to struggle the week of my surgery and a couple of the following months that followed this last January, seeing myself in all the scars that I had from under my arm down to my rib cage. I don't know if you guys, from the drain, from the, from the cut, from the lymph node surgery, and then realizing I couldn't raise my arm or something like that. I was like, I really was in my head, like, am I going to feel like this forever? To the last question you just answered, Kristen. And then finding out that you have to go on, tamoxifen, and tamoxifen causes extreme weight gain or extreme weight loss. I definitely, from being a fitness instructor and constantly being judged about my body image, I was like, why is all this happening? Why couldn't it have just been the cancer? Take the surgery out, halas, like it's over. That means finish in Arabic, but I'm like, it's over. But it just feels like now that I'm almost approaching a year in December, that it kind of has felt never ending. And there is this moment through my journey that it's like, you're fighting this. You're going through this. Like you're stronger than you think, and don't let these scars kind of break you down and make you feel less than or make you feel uglier. There's a moment, like what Kira said, there's a moment when you're like, you went through this, you're strong, you are a hero to yourself. So no matter what you look like, whether you're gaining weight, losing weight, no matter what scars you have, this is your journey, and you are a warrior in some ways. But it took me a long time to get into that mental space, especially, and I have not surpassed a year like you, like the person asking the question, I didn't get her name, but I've definitely been going through these emotional struggles, and it's just recently that I've got to a place where, like, dude, not a lot of people have gone through what you've gone through this year. And let's not even talk about COVID, but not a lot of people have gone through this. So, you have to find a moment to not be so hard on yourself.
Yeah, and that's great. And it's been our experience of running psychosocial support programs for years that it's not even until close to that 1 year mark that you're even ready to, the appointments kind of die down and you're ready to kind of process what you've just been through, as everyone else in your life is like, okay, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering, did you draw on any of your experience with your dance injury? Like, did that kind of interplay, or?
How funny you ask. I started radiation in May, and I had 18 rounds of radiation. And before, radiation can be quite exhausting to your body. Some days you just want to go in and just knock out and go to sleep. But there were some days I made TikTok dance videos. So I would come home after radiation, and we would have to drive an hour out because in United Arab Emirates, the radiation center is in Abu Dhabi, and I was living in Dubai. So we would have to go through checkpoints, being that it was quarantine, and they'd have to be like, why are you on the road? And I'm like, I'm going to radiation. So I'd come back and I'd say, you know what, I'm going to get all dressed up. I'd put on red lipstick, and I do my makeup, and I go into my living room, move all of the furniture out of the living room, find find a really happy dance song and just choreograph and make a dance and make a TikTok video. And it felt really good. And I would share it. I would post it online and they'd be like, yeah, go girl. Yes, yes. Whoever said yes, yes, Maya. And they'd be
Makes
like,
TikToks too.
yeah, they'd be like, yes. And, you know, and speaking on Kristen, that support system felt so nice. People would message in, I talked to different friends and they'd be like, go, yeah, we're with you. So yeah, dancing definitely played a role. And actually for me, once I found the right bra, the right sports bra, running helped. So I really got into running. It was just like a place for me to like tune out completely, just play my music and kind of go. So I find that finding a way, your own way to move, whether it's fitness, whether it's dance, or having a physical outlet, for me has been so healing.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Melissa, thank you. You're amazing.
That's really resonating with everyone. Okay, well, we can circle back to some more questions about body image, but why don't we move on to communication? Some questions came in ahead of time, I think from some single gals regarding dating, the timing for sharing news, about what you've been through. So someone's like ready to just start dating, kind of wants the welcome distraction. I mean, COVID is going on, so that again does kind of change everything. But just curious, is it better to focus on treatment? Also, when do I tell someone about my breast cancer history, someone who I'm dating? How do I, you know, how do you bring it up? How do you, someone else is saying, how can I feel super stressed out. How can I feel sexy and spontaneous when there's so much baggage attached to it? How do I introduce this topic, you know, before things are getting serious? Like you kind of don't want to wait till it's super serious necessarily and then bring it out. But anyone want to raise their hand and talk about that? Christina.
So I had just gotten dumped when I had found out that I had breast cancer. So horrible cosmic timing. But I can relate a lot to the question of how do I tell someone and when do I tell someone? And I remember putting so much pressure on myself to figure out what is the right way to say it and how do I say it and when, feeling this massive obligation that I realized was to someone I didn't really know. And hey, like we are warriors and we have gone through so much and we've had to rebuild ourselves. And so why do I care so much about what someone that doesn't even really know me that well, like maybe just like had a drink with me, like why do I care so much about what the thought is? And I learned to be more forgiving too with putting this pressure on myself when I realized, well, what if I flip the table and it was someone I was dating and they were going to tell me this news? I thought to myself, this doesn't really impact how I see someone. It would just be more of, hey, this is something that they're going through. And so I figured to give that forgiveness to myself was a really essential tool. And finally, I guess I would just sum up and say, when do you feel like you should start dating? And when should you tell someone? Whenever you want to. I mean, we're the CEO of our own dating lives. And why not just wait until you are ready to tell someone? And I feel like it's not too much about the what, even though the what is important. But if you are ready and you wait until you're comfortable, I feel like, I know in my experience, the delivery has been better because it's coming from me and it's coming from a place of confidence and, you know, not like, oh, should I tell them now? Or I don't know. Just feeling really deeply rooted in who you are, what you've been through, and giving yourself the freedom of doing what you want when you want, I feel like is super powerful. A really good boss move.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on the panel from maybe the perspective of you've been in a long-term relationship pre-cancer, talking about how to communicate with your partner. Some questions came up. My partner's frustrated that I'm not into having sex anymore. I feel guilty, but my libido is close to zero. Any tips? And yeah, someone who's just finding it really stressful and painful even. And again, asking, is this going to go back to normal? So.
Yeah, I could, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I could speak to the pain and the libido part really quick. I could tell, there are three, pain is very, very common. When I start asking patients, once they're on ovarian suppression and the estrogen goes really, really low, that's not a normal physiologic state for you to be in. It's even lower than women who go through natural menopause. And so your body reacts in different ways. Everyone reacts in different ways, but there are like three things I tell everyone. The first thing is, once you start to feel these symptoms, you're going to feel like you need to put all these different products on that area that's where you're having pain on the outside of the vagina. And I always tell patients, like, no soaps, nothing that has any like fragrances or anything that can irritate that skin, because what sometimes I've found is that women can have like a low level, what's called a contact dermatitis or allergic reaction, and that can make those pain symptoms even worse, and they can be even more exacerbated during sexual activity. So I say, like, no soaps. That even means like sitting in bubble baths, which I know is hard because everyone likes baths, but just use like an oil instead. Only water, And then, so the first thing is eliminate irritants, and that includes like panty liners, tampons, choose things that don't have unnatural fragrances. And the second is, patients always ask me what lubricants to use. Like, even if you're not feeling symptoms that are that severe, lube every time, all the time, like for the rest of your life. This is just, how this is gonna be. Even if your symptoms feel like they get a little bit better, just use lubricants every time. I always tell patients water-based versus silicone-based. I recommend silicone-based, but just stay away from gimmicks. So like nothing that's warming or has a taste or fragrances. Like, I always recommend Uber Lube. You guys probably may have some recommendations too, but so that's lubricants. But then I say, start moisturizing every day. Like, you moisturize your face, you put your under eye cream on at night. So when you get out of the shower and your skin's still a little bit damp, you're going to use single ingredient organic coconut oil, solid at room temperature, and you just place it on the outside of the vagina. And that helps hold the moisture in. And it also helps protect that delicate skin when you're, if you're someone who has burning when you urinate. And so that I start with that. If that's not working after like a couple of weeks, then you can try something with hyaluronic acid. And that's not hormonal, but hyaluronic acid is the ingredient you want to find, because it pulls moisture from the environment and has it sit on that skin and protects it. And so that's what I start with. And then I have everyone do basically those things. And then later on, if that's not working or they have really severe symptoms, we talk about estrogen, but it's, it's controversial and always involves your gynecologist. But someone wrote in about Foria, and I think Foria is a good brand, but I don't know a lot about CBD in the vagina. I think that's like a new territory, but Foria is a reputable brand. And then patients are always asking me about libido, and I feel like that's such a complicated question, but the way I've approached it, and Jalila, you can probably talk about this also, because I always tell patients, get active, start moving, start to try to feel better about your body. If you get your blood pumping, exercise increases testosterone, natural testosterone, and that's good for your libido. You want to try to feel good about your body, whatever that entails. And also, like, getting to know your new body. Your anatomy is different. So what used to feel good may not feel good anymore, but give yourself space to like figure that out. I'm like giving you permission to get to know your body in whatever context that means. Sometimes that means sending patients to like this really cool sex shop that I found that's like online and has all these really interesting things. And so there are two pharmaceutical options, but they're pretty new, and there's some interactions with tamoxifen, and so I'm kind of waiting for more long-term data, but I try to always steer people towards that, and then managing relationship issues. And with regards to not feeling like you want to get into sex with your partner, I have so many patients that feel really guilty about that. And I tell them, men are like microwaves and women are like crockpots, and that's like a baseline. But now, like, it takes even longer. So you have to do like some extra things to get yourself ready. That means like more foreplay. There's this new thing called dip. It's like audio porn for women. They're like sexy stories. It's called Dipsy and Quinn. I think Quinn, yeah. And you can like listen to a sexy podcast or watch something that makes you feel sexy, and you just have to focus on it and try to get into the mood. But pain is common, but it's not normal. It doesn't have to be normal. So there are steps you can take.
Thank you. That
was a lot. I'm sorry, I just took the
Sure.
conversation.
Start going through the chat and the Q&A, because I think there's a few other like really technical questions for you. But Jalila, did you want to chime in on maybe, I think you were responding maybe to the communication part?
Okay, so for me in particular, during my breast cancer surgery, I also had a myomectomy. And for those of you who don't know what that is, there was a fibroid or a benign tumor in my uterus. So they had to remove that at the same time they removed the tumor in my breast. Because of that surgery, they were like, oh, maybe you should hold off on being sexually active for a while. Ironically, I was already practicing celibacy for about almost a year at the time of my surgery this January. So when it was time for, I now am dating someone, and when it was time for us to move towards intimacy, I was nervous. I was like, is this going to be like, I'm losing my virginity again? What is going on? How is this about to go down? So I went and got aloe-based lube. Is that, I don't know if that's correct. It said aloe. It's a brand of lube, organic. And I said, okay, I have not had the feeling, I know that this is very common, of like people not wanting to be sexually active. Because I've not had sex for about 18 months, I was really excited to do it most recently. So I tried the aloe-based lube, and I do feel some discomfort, but now that we do like a little bit more foreplay and we take a little bit more time in the beginning, it's much more comfortable, and I am excited to do it. And I noticed that when I do like a yoga class or like a meditation class in the morning, or do some sort of workout, I'm quite, yeah, there we go, excited. Yeah, libido's up. Yeah, can we do it?
That's awesome. Okay, before we go to the questions in the chat and Q&A, anyone else from the panel want to chime in? Anything to share about communication with partners, or head off to the question? Oh, Kira, all right.
I can just chime in on, the communication with a long-term partner. I'm very fortunate to have an incredibly supportive husband, but, I would just say that, the more open I was able to be with him, the more empathetic and compassionate he could be with me. And we were able to find our own way. Not to say that any of it was easy, and it's ever changing, but it's, I would just have faith in, the timing of when you feel it's right to share with someone, with a potential partner, with an existing partner. If there's ever a moment to kind of lean into our own vulnerability and realness and strength as women, this is it. And I think that there's actually quite a bit of teaching that we can do to our partners, to our family, to our friends around, these other sides of life that not everyone's going to experience. And I've had a lot of people say things like, oh, you're so inspiring. And of course, that's not, I don't want to be inspiring in that way. It's nothing I ever would have chosen. But I do think there is a way that we can sort of help others have more compassion and understanding. And it's very much what we try and do with our community in Ever Violet, is sort of kind of pull back that veil of support and support groups and nurturing one another. And so I think there's a real beautiful opportunity just from a humanity standpoint to just be honest. And I know so much easier said than done, because it's scary and it's vulnerable, and we're still dealing with so many of our own changes and accepting ourselves. But I do think there is a lot of beauty in that.
Sorry, I was thanking you, but I was muted. Thank you for that very thoughtful commentary. Okay, so we've got lots of chat questions coming in. Someone asked, first of all, Dr. Rojas, what was the name of that podcast? And I had that question too, because I thought Rethink should share that and make sure everyone knows about it.
Yeah, I typed it into the text. It's Dipsy and Quinn, and I actually learned about it because the person who started Dipsy is a woman. I heard her speaking on a podcast, and I was really inspired by her perspective. And then I also tell patients, when they're thinking about ways to get in the mood, some people respond more to visual cues. and like ask me about watching porn. Is that okay? And like I talk, you know, I try to make this normal conversation, but like I told you guys, I grew up really conservative, so even sometimes I have a hard time. But I would say I've actually looked a lot into this, and Google ethical porn. If you want to look into something like that, stay off sites like Pornhub and YouPorn because of all of these. If you actually Google that, there's all these issues with that. But if you Google ethical porn, there's actually sexy videos made by women for women. Like, and sometimes you have to pay a little bit for the videos, but that makes sure all the actors get paid. And so if anyone was ever thinking about that, that's my 2 cents on that as well.
Amazing. Okay, one of the questions that came in, and I'm also seeing something similar in the chat, is what lubes are safe for breast cancer patients to use? And does that depend on or change depending on the cancer type or the tumor markers? I think someone asked, you know, if you're on tamoxifen, does that affect what type you should use?
Yeah, so, you know, I separate lubricants from moisturizer. You know, remember moisturizers every day and lubricant just before sex. So typically there aren't hormones in lubricants, and they're all pretty like inert materials like silicone, which is totally safe, and other things. I just say, you know, because your anatomy is different and your physiology is different from the medications, just avoid all of the extra gimmicks and find a product that doesn't have all the extra stuff. I think you might be asking about moisturizers though, because that's kind of the controversy, is some have estrogen or testosterone in them. And there is some newer data, and this is actually something that I'm looking at in my program, giving really, really low dose vaginal testosterone. And for women who have a history of estrogen sensitive breast cancer who are on aromatase inhibitors or tamoxifen, so a little tiny, tiny baby dose of testosterone directly into the vagina can help with a lot of those symptoms with pain. It could potentially even help with libido. There is a product that's commercially available. It's called Intrarosa, but if you don't have commercial insurance, you're not eligible for the coupon program. So when I prescribe it, I actually find a compounding pharmacy that I trust to make this really, really low dose vaginal testosterone. And there's no evidence showing that it increases estrogen in women who have a history of breast cancer. And then sometimes I do prescribe vaginal estrogen for women with really severe symptoms, even if they have a history of breast cancer with estrogen. I talk to their oncologist and I try everything else first. But then, you know, if their symptoms are so severe, sometimes we do that even for a short period of time. One thing I have done is patients who are on ovarian suppression and an aromatase inhibitor like letrozole or anastrozole, ask their oncologist if they can switch to tamoxifen for a couple months, because it actually makes their symptoms a little less easier to manage. And oncologists are more comfortable with giving vaginal estrogen if you're on tamoxifen than if you're on an aromatase inhibitor, and has to do with the way it works and everything. And so I actually talk a lot about this on my Instagram, but that is one thing that I've worked with oncologists to do, is maybe switching therapy to see if symptoms get better, and then giving vaginal estrogen with tamoxifen for a little while.
That's awesome. And I think that's really empowering for everyone to hear about the kinds of questions you bring forward to your oncologist. So don't just quietly suffer in silence and have, you know, relationship issues, but there's things you can ask about or go talk to your oncologist about to try different treatments. Okay, let's see what's in the Q&A. Lots of great chats. Okay, Oh, someone asked, what do you think about the Mona Lisa touch?
Oh my gosh, this is so important. I'm so glad that came up. Yeah, so the Mona Lisa is a laser device that is placed in the vagina, and it's actually now being marketed towards women with a history of breast cancer. And this is my PSA. These devices were originally designed for the face, for scars on the body. They were not originally designed to be used in the vagina. And the FDA has actually asked them to kind of pull back a little bit on their aggressive vaginal rejuvenation, which I actually hate that term. It's a marketing term. It's not a real thing. Everyone's anatomy is different. But, you know, there are, and I think that, you know, you guys obviously have more insight into this, but I do think that women like you are a vulnerable population, because you're told you can't try this or you can't try this, but you're having these symptoms and we can't give you the things we would normally give you. And so I just worry about these companies kind of like targeting women with a history of breast cancer. There's not a lot of long-term data. There is some short-term data, women on aromatase inhibitors, but I think that there's something physiologically different about that tissue. It doesn't heal as well. And so I think the results for those women are variable. I've had some patients who say it's really helped, but they're usually women who are on tamoxifen or in the perimenopausal age. And some women who have really, really severe symptoms who did it did not have a good reaction, and it's super expensive. And so, you know, I tell my patients I'm waiting for longer term data, but if you are going to go ahead and do it, just make sure it's someone who is very skilled in dealing with different types of anatomy, because every woman is different, but your anatomy and how the vulva and the vagina, those tissues are different once you're on breast cancer treatment. And so you wouldn't want to get it done by like a dermatologist who maybe doesn't do a lot of pelvic exams and doesn't, you know, isn't familiar with managing everyone who's different. So that's
Thank you. There's a gynecological clinic here in Toronto called Open Arms, and they did invest in a Mona Lisa touch machine, and I know they've been offering the service, and it's really costly and it's not covered by insurance. I mean, you have to weigh the cost of like your quality of life, but also to make it accessible. And I don't know, maybe a clinical trial is needed, or have there been many clinical trials? Do you know, like offering it?
yeah.
Free to breast cancer patients.
Yeah, there's a handful of trials, but they don't have that many women. It's like 20 or 40 women. And we like to see trials with more women with longer term follow-up, you know, especially women that have had multiple treatments. And, you know, you actually need to compare them to a control. So women who are getting like some sort of sham procedure that's not the actual laser, because if not, there's all these issues with bias and a placebo effect. And so the studies about it haven't been very well designed. So some women have gotten it and it's worked out for them. And I don't like, this isn't about shaming anyone or making them feel bad, but for me personally, I'm waiting until there's more data, and they're working on it actually. They're looking at this, but it just hasn't been reported yet.
Okay. One more question. I think this will go to you as the surgeon. Someone says, I have basically PTSD from my lumpectomy. I really want to get plastic surgery to balance out my breast, but the idea of going under the knife again is scary, worried about more scarring. Which surgery has the least amount of physical scarring, but will still even me out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I understand having PTSD about I don't understand, but I can definitely empathize, and that is a normal feeling to have. Surgery in itself, even without a cancer diagnosis, is a trauma. You know, you have to trust the people around you to go to sleep, that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. It's not a natural thing to go under anesthesia and have someone say they're going to do your surgery. It is a real trauma, and it involves really trusting everyone and all the members of your team. With regards to doing something that could help even you out without being a big procedure, you know, if it's a small, what we call a contour deformity, so if it's like a small dent or a little area that's maybe uneven, then you can actually have fat from another part of your body spun around and then injected into that area. And sometimes people can do it under local or just sedation. It doesn't involve a scar. And it's been shown to be safe in women with a history of breast cancer. When this technology first came out, there was some concern, like putting fat back in the breast, is that going to increase the risk of recurrence? And that actually hasn't been shown to be the case. So for women who've had a lumpectomy, who have a scar or maybe have a little divot or a little dent, that can be a good option for them if they don't want to have a larger surgery.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maybe we can turn to the rest of the panel. Anyone want to chime in or speak to scars, how you've managed changes in your breast, just from personal experience, what's helped, where you're at? Christina. Oh, you're muted.
There we are. I don't know if I would recommend this for everyone, but something that made me feel so comfortable and so proud of the scars that we're showing. I had a friend who was a photographer, and we took some sassy photos, in just my favorite dresses, and you could pretty clearly see the scars in those photos. And I remember when I was looking at them, I just felt not sad or feeling like, oh, this is a blemish. I felt so proud of that visual reminder of how badass we all are. but I do remember, like, especially when I was dating and like thinking like, how do I explain these scars, or how do I explain that my hair is falling out? So I think there definitely is a very real dimension to looping it back to dating. How do we also sort of explain, or how do we wear certain things in public, and how do we manage those perceptions? But yeah, it's I'm just so proud of my scars, and I think really seeing them like optically right in front of me in a photo shoot was really impactful. But I think everyone has their own little things that could potentially work. So I'm excited to hear what else everyone thinks.
My turn to stay on mute for my response. We've definitely seen over the years, we've been involved in a few different photography projects, the SCAR project, which is a big photo exhibit that we brought to Canada. I don't know if anyone's seen it. Just anytime it's like sharing your story, it's empowering for oneself. And I'm always amazed at the women that will bear it all and put it out there in a photo. But to your point, maybe it's just for you at home. Maybe you want to be really out there with your photos. Yeah, I think everyone's different. Kira, did you want to chime in on your thoughts?
Yeah, because I've watched so many women. I mean, I know it's a big deal to model lingerie, but all of the women that we have model our garments are cancer thrivers. And we also share individual women's stories through a journal series called In Her Words. And we do that very intentionally to try and empower and help people feel good about themselves. And I've had so many people who I've just met and said, would you like to come model for us? And, none of these are professional models. They're real people like you and I. And what's often met initially with so much, I'm not a model, I can't do that, turns into this incredible, I think the best days we've ever had as a company have been our shoot days. And every single one of our company members and team just, we're crying, we're just loving each other, we're just supporting each other. It's just all about sort of facing that. And it's not linear. It's not like, okay, you have this great day and then the next day you're fine. But I do think there's so much to what Christina said about just sort of seeing yourself and having that different perspective, and maybe realizing that what we feel on the inside isn't necessarily what we might see from the outside or what others might see from the outside. So I'm just a big champion of, if one can, just facing that and embracing those scars as badges of courage. And and they're war wounds, and we are warriors. So I say celebrate that.
Thank you. Great. I'm just seeing in the chat, Shauna, it looks like there's someone who had their hand up. Do you want to navigate that?
Yeah, for sure. Just give me one moment and we will get them. Okay, so Jamila had her hand up. So Jamila, I am going to turn on your mic. So whenever you're ready, you can feel free to ask our panel your question.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Okay. Hi, I'm Jamila Jones. This year I'm 7 years survivor thriver, stage 3 breast cancer. My question is for Dr. Kristen Rojas. I wanted to know your advice or your thoughts about the yoni vaginal steaming. I've been in married for 17 years, and off and on, but been having, the same issues with a lot of women, breast cancer survivors are having with the intimacy and dryness and so forth. And I had purchased one of those yoni vaginal steaming kits, but I just never used it because I wasn't too sure whether, and I'm on tamoxifen. My cancer was positive, for estrogen. So I'm really leery about using products?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's come up. I think anyone who's been to the Goop website has seen the thing on steaming and jade eggs and things like that. And so the thing about, the first thing before trying something like a steaming device, I would probably just check in with your gynecologist, make sure that there's not any exacerbation of something else that's causing your symptoms to come and go. Because what I wouldn't want is for you to do some sort of procedure or something that could potentially hurt you, and the concept of steaming is tough because the vagina is actually not like an open pipe, it's a collapsed tube. So it's hard for me to imagine that steam really gets up into the vagina. And what I worry about is women burning themselves, especially because that skin is so delicate. I know that there is a push for steaming, and I would just say, I don't know if, just would be careful with the temperature of the water. And, I haven't found that I don't have any patients who've told me that it's been helpful, but I just would want you to be more safe than sorry. And yeah, that would be my, there are other things to try first is what I would start with. I would try with all the other things I talked to you about first, especially if you're feeling symptoms of dryness and pain, because I wouldn't want you to have like an adverse reaction or an allergic reaction to something that's in the steam that could potentially make your symptoms worse.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I think we have a few more technical questions. One that came in before tonight was, if I'm in medically induced menopause, do I need to use birth control still? And if so, what's safe?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can answer that quickly. If you're on a clinical trial, the requirements are that we also have to have you on some form of contraception because we don't want you to get pregnant while you're getting a study drug. But if you're on medically induced menopause, like I'm guessing you're talking about Zoladex or Lupron, your estrogen realistically is so incredibly low that you would not get pregnant. That being said, depending on what your situation is, I do always recommend that patients, practice safe sex and use barrier methods if that's something that that is something that is an element of your life. And we don't recommend right now birth control pills for women with a history of breast cancer. There's more controversy about things like the IUD. The copper IUD is completely safe because it's just copper. There's a progesterone IUD that's a really low dose, and I actually have advocated for its use in women with a history of breast cancer, especially younger women who really need reliable contraception through treatment and don't want to have an unplanned pregnancy, but it's a little bit more controversial. And so I would speak to your oncologist specifically and make sure they don't have any specific recommendations for you because they know you the best, but typically that's how we manage that.
Great. Another question that's come in for you is, do reconstructed nipples always stay raised? And then part of that is like for years or maybe like forever.
Yeah, it depends on your surgeon. And the way your skin is and how your particular reconstruction is done. Sometimes they do stay raised and sometimes they flatten over time, but everyone's response is different.
Okay. I know the question, we kind of covered it a couple of different ways, but it just keeps coming up. It's about the pain and the pain during sex while on ovarian suppression. So someone wants even more tips on how to minimize it.
Do any of the panelists have any anything that's, I feel like if any of you guys have anything that's worked, and then I can say one more thing. Okay.
All right. I'm like, who's gonna say something? My personal experience most recently was my biggest advice is don't just go right into it. Obviously, for women in general without breast cancer, don't just hop right in, right? Yeah, okay. And then I would also say, really make sure, I totally agree with you there, Kristen, about lubricating. I think that's super, super important. making sure that you're very lubricated, using any lube. Like I was saying, I was using the aloe, and it was not painful at all after using lube. But I feel like if you don't use any lube, or if you get right into it, it's actually very uncomfortable. It's actually painful, and it actually deters you from wanting to continue to be intimate with your partner. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you. I think we've had quite a few questions about vaginal pain. What about breast pain and intimacy? Because I'm a couple of years out of my reconstruction surgery, and it's still incredibly painful just to even graze the breast.
Yeah, if you're still having significant pain years after surgery, there is something called chronic mastectomy pain syndrome. And I would see a pain specialist. Things like acupuncture can be helpful, topical lidocaine, like lidocaine cream, other things, seeing a physical therapist, because it is a nerve issue. It's an issue with the nerves that we have to cut through during breast surgery. And sometimes when those nerves try to go back, it can grow back in a way where they're always sending a signal of pain, and they're like hyper sensitive. And so I would see, there's all these new things coming out with pain specialists. So they may have something that could be helpful as well. And some of the other panelists can weigh in without having to take something like an opioid,
Great. Anyone else want to chime in about that?
Can I?
Yes, please.
So I was actually going to ask about that. Like, I still even have trouble lying on my side, like from my ribs all the way up my arm, and simultaneously I feel breast pain. But then when if I were to touch my breast, I don't feel anything at all. It's very, like, there's no nerves there. Like, you can feel like surgical pain, something deep inside, but then on externally, like, just if I was to do something like this to my breast, I don't feel anything. Like, I feel no sensation. So I was going to ask you, Chris, and I think somebody asked this earlier, like, is that forever? How do the nerves come back? And my surgery was in end of January. But I don't know, like, if anyone experienced, Kira, I know that you both have had this, like, even lying on your side, or like even hugging someone is still quite painful. Yeah. Go ahead. That was all I was going to chime in and say. I can relate to the breast pain.
I'll chime in, even though I'm not the panelist, but I have a question for Kira as well. I find it helpful to wear a bra at night, like a stretch sports bra. Is that?
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to say. Both for sort of surface sensitivity, whether there's like ongoing scarring and nerve damage that is sensitive to the touch. Nipple can be sore, nipple area, if you have had a skin sparing. So we create our bras so that they are really comfortable to sleep in. And I have to say that that's one of the things that people love the most about them, especially our bralettes, because they are just so stretchy and soft and breathable and comfortable. And so both during sleeping as well as during sex, we've gotten a lot of feedback that that's really helpful. The other thing that we've heard, and I also experienced this personally, is lymphatic massage. So a lot of times, because of those lymph nodes that are removed, even if it's just a sentinel lymph node, they're even if one hasn't developed lymphedema, it can just help to kind of massage the area and help break the scar tissue down and help the lymphatic system stay. Dr. Rojas, you can probably speak more to this than me, but it's something that I've heard quite a bit from our customers, and I too have experienced it personally, that it's very, very helpful. And I'm many, many years out, and I still go in at times just to get a little bit of help and just sort of loosening things up, because I think things, at least scar tissue wise, can really tighten, and that can cause quite a bit of pain.
And how long were you feeling the pain? Like, how did it ever subside, or like how long did that go on for?
I would say years, but only with a matter of degrees. So it definitely got better, but I would say that the massage was by far the best thing for that. And yeah, and actually they can teach you how to sort of do it yourself as well, so that you can sustain that.
Yeah. But did you find that in your first year, like Christina as well, did you find that the whole, like, for me, like I said, since January, this has been going on. Did you find that you were in pain consistently for months after the surgery, after the radiation? Like, were you still in pain like 1 or 2 years? Like that's really my question.
I personally didn't have constant pain right after, but I may have had a different treatment and protocol than you. So for me, it was something that just sort of gradually got better, but I did feel like I needed help to kind of get over those humps of getting stuck in some of the pain and in some of the lack of circulation in the lymphatic system.
Yeah, I would just add to that, especially if you've had reconstruction, then it does involve manipulating the chest wall muscles quite a bit. And you may not even realize it, but having limited mobilization after surgery, which you don't even realize, which you're always kind of protecting that side. Seeking out a physical therapist. There are physical therapists who work specifically with women with a history of breast surgery, and getting that mobilization back. Sometimes you can have what's called referred pain. So you can have, a nerve that's pinched over here, but you feel it over here. Yeah. And they can help work with that mobilization and can be really helpful tools.
Thank you. Christina, I'm thinking you in your bio, you had this kind of wild bio talking about fake ID and the back of police vans. Have you found, has that continued like more recently? Like, are you still out there dating and having your wild life? I mean, pandemic aside.
Yeah, I'll take this answer from my dungeon. It's very dark in this room now, I realize. So actually, I feel like a story that'll connect us all together, really bring us together. I do want to share the fake teeth story, and hopefully this will make people feel better about dating. But when I met this very handsome man and we'd gone out, I had revealed that I was about to have breast removal surgery and that I was feeling so self-conscious about it. And so he looked at me, took my face in his hands, and leaned in and like clicked the top of his tongue to the roof of his mouth and removed all of his teeth to make me feel like more at ease and more comfortable. So I'm not really sure like how I felt about that, but if anyone has dating adventures, let me know, and I'd love to like commiserate with you or celebrate or anything like that. But yeah, no, I feel like in my experience, I've had a lack of sort of like that spark feeling, the libido, all of that. And so the best way that I know how to replicate that sense of joy and excitement is through travel. So that's why I still prioritize a lot of solo travel, and I've had a lot of ups and downs with my feelings about intimacy. So I find that if I pour that energy into other buckets of my life, like movement, like so many people have said, it's such a great thing. I think it helps me feel a little bit more balanced, and I think it's all interrelated.
I'm seeing
and I ID store in case there are any FBI investigators on the line.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, I like that advice. That's really helpful. Okay, so I'm just looking to see, we have a few more questions. I think a lot of people are asking for some of the resources, websites, how to follow these awesome panelists, and we will definitely send links. I see Shauna's already posted about the sexy stories, but we'll kind of maybe be able to do a little summary and make sure we can get everything that was discussed out to everyone, because this has been a very helpful conversation and lots of great information being shared. So once again, thank you to you guys for being so sharing. And
I want to say really quick too about communication. I feel like if someone wants to talk to a friend or partner, I feel like forward them this recording. I feel like it would just explain so much, and I feel like would give such good context. So I feel like use this as your tool and your resource.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Yeah, I think a lot of times friends and families, I mean, the first step is we as women don't really know what's going to happen or what's going on. Dr. Rojas, you talked about that, just that there's so much information to convey to patients at the time of diagnosis, and it can be overwhelming, and there's just so many, checks that we have to cover off with just treatment itself. And unfortunately, sex and body image and how's your sex life, that question doesn't get asked a lot. I'm curious with any of the panelists remembering back, not Dr. Rojas, but the rest of you, did anyone ask you about that on your healthcare team?
Ask us about our sexual health, or
yeah, ask how your sexual health was.
Like I said, I came from a more conservative environment, being in the Middle East. I think that their concern primarily was focused a lot on fertility, not necessarily my sexual health and my intimacy levels, but they were really very concerned with, obviously adding chemo or how the tamoxifen will affect reproduction and fertility. Fertility was more of like their focus than it was on how's your sex life, So yeah, I was saying that this is maybe one of the first times I'm really able to dive into this discussion, and I'm actually recording this, so I remember when I see the doctors here in America, all of the little questions I do want to ask that I didn't get the chance to ask overseas. So yeah.
Kira or Christina, did any doctors, oncologists, nurses ask you about your sexual health during treatment?
Yeah, I did have doctors ask me, and they, they were very quick to say that there are going to be solutions, and then there are going to be ongoing challenges. For me, I guess the one thing that I just want to impart, we all are going to have our own physical experiences, and some of them are going to be painful, but I think there's just a lot of wisdom in realizing that from a body image standpoint, maybe some of us were very young when we faced these diagnoses, but the truth is that at a certain point in time, everyone we know is going to start going through these challenges. And I think I happen to be fortunate that I have a lot of friends that are older than me, and they are already in menopause. And so, I was just sort of joining the club, for different reasons. But, bodies change. We all go through these things, but in many ways, it's sort of an opportunity to just sort of redefine who we are. And so, in a moment when we're feeling really vulnerable and maybe just self-critical or just having a hard time accepting what's happened, I think there's a lot of beauty in realizing like eventually everyone's going to kind of get to this point, and maybe we got there a little bit earlier, but that, we can just really connect with other women around these things. And I think being open like we're doing now is just so, so important, and just feeling like we're not alone going through it. I think there's just so much to that. So.
Thank you. Well said.
So true. And I also want to encourage and tell the people watching that this part is really important. I feel like it's so easy to minimize the feelings of our appearance and our relationships with others because we're dealing with this big scary thing. But this stuff is still so important, and I guess I would just encourage and cheer anyone on who needs to hear it. Talk to your doctor, and if they don't know, fire them or maybe get a referral or find someone that you're really comfortable with, because I feel like everyone deserves to have this be a top priority, and you don't need to feel self-conscious about seeking help on top of this massive health thing that we're all dealing with too.
We completely agree, Christina. In fact, Rethink helped create care priorities for young women with breast cancer. So, the healthcare teams and the oncologists have their standards of care for cancer treatment. These are more all the stuff, like your fertility, like your sexual health, that we hear our young women needing to have addressed. So we have that right in our care guidelines. One of the top 10 things that you need to ask if you have a young woman in front of you, in your cancer care team is to ask about our sexual health, because it does get missed. I think more people, these conversations, we've been having them now for a couple of years, and it is getting out there, and there's more awareness raised that that's a big part of people's lives. And so, yeah, we just need to keep getting the word out and get people comfortable asking and talking about it, and make sure healthcare teams are talking about it and asking about it too. I like that we're kind of like sharing final words of wisdom. Jalila, did you want to add anything? Not to put you on the spot, as I put you on the spot.
I guess my final words of wisdom, it would be something that I would say to myself, which is, don't be so hard on yourself. That's really something that I had to recognize. I was really challenging myself from, how did you even get sick? Like, what did you do to you know, and then you go through the external scars of like, look at you, like, how are you going to fix this? And what kind of surgery are you going to do to make yourself be normal, you know? But then there's a moment where you kind of let all of that go, and you realize everything you've gone through, like I said, and all of us have gone through. And there's a moment where it's like, you got to let it go, and don't be so hard on yourself, and take a moment to find and do things in your life that make you happy. Like, I've really been focusing on just living in a way that I wasn't before my diagnosis, like focusing on really incorporating things that genuinely bring joy to my life. And I think that that process makes it a little bit less difficult. And simultaneously, something that Dr. Kristen said is, your support system and your community is so vital. Don't think that you have to do this alone, because you're not alone. And I mean, everyone has a unique breast cancer story. Now that I've talked to so many women from stage 2 or triple negative to double this and estrogen, progesterone positive, everyone has a different cancer story. But I think that there's a community, if you delve into it and if you tap into it, that brings you a lot of healing. And don't be afraid to share your story or find somebody in your community or a group like this. And I think that, don't be so hard on yourself. That's it. That's all.
That's great. We all need to hear that a lot, right? Thank you. And Dr. Rojas, I know you've been fielding all the technical questions because you're the physician on the panel. And I do know that there's still more in the chat, and we can, follow up and make sure we're creating content and helping get those answers out. And I know someone asked, how do I follow you? Because I think you probably answer some of these questions with the content that you're creating on your own Instagram. But yeah, do you have any final words on this topic and what you've heard tonight?
Yeah, so I thank you so much, everyone, all the panel members, for sharing your experience, and also for everyone writing these questions in. It's, I learn every day. But I wanted to just finish with empowering everyone to, your oncologists want to take good care of you, but we're like, oftentimes we're nerds, and if someone brings up sex, it's, you may not get the reaction that you want in that moment, but they're going to go home and they're going to think about it, and maybe they haven't thought about it before, or maybe another patient asked about the same question that day. And the more we ask, the more you ask, the more, these symptoms also, unfortunately affect women, just regular menopausal women without a history of breast cancer. In a society, we don't do a great job addressing it, but the more you ask, the more providers are going to seek out the expertise that they need. There's a handful of me in the country, but it doesn't take a super specialist to do this stuff and to just give answers that are reassuring and not dangerous. And so keep asking. You have nothing to lose. You've already been through so much, way more than any woman should have to go through. And so just ask the question and say, hey, if you don't know what can help me, do you have any referrals? Maybe you can go refer me to a urogynecologist or a pelvic floor physical therapist, which I often recommend. And the more we talk about it, the more we're going to drive industry to address it. There are 5 different types of Viagra out there, and there's like no black box warning on them. And the 2 libido drugs that came out for women, one of them almost didn't even get passed because women were dizzy if they had like 6 drinks of alcohol that day. And it's just like, there's a whole different, I mean, I feel like industry needs to start addressing these issues more and doing the trials, looking at women with the history of breast cancer. And so the more we bring it up and the more we make it normal conversation, the more I think that'll happen.
That's a great way to end, to tie it back into treatment. So we've had, you know, chatting about care, treatment, people's personal experience, but linking it back to how do we move this forward to improve outcomes. Thank you for that. I'm going to squeeze in one more quick question because it's very specific. Does the coconut oil go right on the labia or just the outside?
Yes. So if like this is the outside of the labia, you take it in your fingers like this, warm it up, and then just place it on the outside. And kind of like, you know, a lot of women have pain right here. So you put it right in that area as well. And then you go to bed, you're horizontal. Some of it works its way up. You don't need to go crazy, you know, like putting it inside or anything like that. Just put it on the outside, the labia minora and around the opening.
Great. What a great way to end. A very specific question. But that's what this panel's for. That's what these kind of conversations are for, because, and I think we started at the beginning of the night, Christina, maybe you were kind of connecting the dots here that or I think maybe it was actually Kira, it's so interconnected. It's like the physical change affects the identity and that affects your relationships. And, you know, it's been fun kind of juggling the technical and the, and the personal questions and the relationship ones. And that's kind of what you have to do because it is also interconnected. So I just want to say again, oh, Kira, one more thought.
I just wanted to, I know you're wrapping up, but I just wanted to put an offer out to anyone who feels like they need any guidance with regard to clothing or wants to share their story or feels like they want to become part of a community. You know, we're all about just trying to meet people's needs. And so you guys, hopefully you all will find a way to sort of share that. I don't want to promote it right now, but I do want to let everyone know that, you know, we offer one-on-one consultations all the time. And that's what we're here to try and help make people's lives better if we can through clothing. So if there's anything we can do, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Amazing. Great. Thank you. Okay. Well, this is what this community is for, helping each other. And thank you for that, that offer, Kira. I think that's it. This has been a great conversation and really have enjoyed meeting all of you and hearing all the questions from our community. I know there's always more questions that come in and we will have these kinds of conversations again. We will continue to do these kind of panels and put out content and work with women like you to help get the message out and help get solutions out. And yeah, so I agree. Let's keep talking, let's keep asking questions, and let's keep getting answers out to everyone. I think that's about a wrap. Shauna, I can't remember, do you jump in and do any final housekeeping or?
No, but just everyone know that we're going to be following up with some emails. So we'll make sure that you have everyone's handles and that you know how to follow everyone that you've heard speak today. And then in about a week, we're going to be following up with the recording. So like Christina was mentioning earlier, you could always use this as a resource for yourself. And then as MJ also mentioned, we usually put out some content related to the panel. So we'll follow up with that. So just keep your eyes on your inbox, as well as our social media channels, because we'll continue the conversation in all those places.
All right, great. Well, I just, again, want to give a big thank you to the panelists for being here. I know everyone's really busy. October's a really busy month. Fall is busy. So to take your time out on a Thursday evening to find some time for us and to have this conversation is great. And again, just thank you to everyone for being here to participate and create the conversation. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we will see you guys soon. Thank you.